Nonprofits that deal with soldiers are reporting a massive increase in conscientious objector calls. The Center on Conscience and War says that they've seen a 1,000% increase in calls since the war in Iran began. Others, like the GI Rights Hotline, are saying they're seeing similar things, as is the Quaker House. I did a report on this recently, and you can read it. There's a link down below. But this is tracking because this is one of the most blatantly amoral wars. I think anyone who's been paying attention and can think clearly can see that this is not a defensive war, first and foremost, that any facade or ruse to make us think that this was us hitting before, they were going to hit us, or that there was an imminent threat, was obviously false. The Iranians didn't really want any of this. They really had no reason to want any of this. They're getting pounded. They're getting pummeled. They're incurring damage that is going to take them forever. A lot of the people there got killed. So they weren't really egging for a war, albeit obviously they did not want to necessarily acquiesce to all the demands of the US, which I think if we were on the other side, we would understand. But we don't understand because we think these people are just, because a lot of people believe all the garbage that we're hearing. And so I've read quite a bit on this, and I've studied this as much as I can. And also, there's also an element of this always where I don't know if you want to call it gut or instinct. And I like to think that God guides me through, and I ask for wisdom on these things. I just don't believe this war is right. I don't believe that we're the good guys in this. And I'm not saying that Iran, uh, they're good guys. I'm not saying the Ayatollah and the mullahs or whatever, that there were these great guys and they provided an amazing life. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but what I'm saying is that the way that the United States is behaving, and the way that the United States has behaved for so many years, so many decades, is not becoming of a benevolent nation. And I think we have to come to terms with this, because I think that's what a good people would do. Also, I want to say that there is a difference, in case there's any inclination among maybe who's watching or whatever, to say that or to think that I'm not being patriotic. There's the quote by Mark Twain, and it goes something like, the people should support America all the time, and their government only when it deserves it. So there's a distinction between the people and the people in charge. And if you've been paying attention, or to anyone who's been paying attention, the people in charge are very different from the people who make up regular Americans, me, you, my neighbor down the road, basically everyone but the people in charge, who make up Congress and the lobbying groups and the whole oligarch network. Those people are not like us. They don't have the same interests, and a lot of them are just downright diabolical. They say that sociopaths gravitate toward positions of power, and they say two of the most common positions of power that sociopaths gravitate toward are the legal realm and, surprise, surprise, government, particularly political work, positions of power. So I think that explains a large part why we're in the condition that we are. In a sense, the people in charge are very, very amoral. So it makes sense that this war is very, very amoral. And it makes sense that they would lie about why they carried out this war, because that's what immoral people do. They lie. They lie through their teeth. They commit atrocities, and then they lie and put up a facade, and they gaslight the people so the people don't turn on them. That's kind of like one of the last things they kind of fear. And I don't know if it's necessarily that they fear the people so much as they fear losing power. See, again, normal people, we kind of don't understand this. Like, maybe you're like me. Most people are like me. You're happy if you have a decent life, the American dream. And that's what my family came here to do in Romania in the 80s. They wanted to live the American dream. Nobody said, we're going to go to America and we're going to be politicians and lobbyists and great big lawyers or whatever. It's kind of like we're going to go to America, and we're going to be left alone by the government, and we're going to work and have you know, food all the time and nice cars and whatever. That was kind of like that that um, materialistic element of it. But there was, you know, the element of it where we could worship freely and we could say what we wanted. And so it was basically to live free and to live a decent life. That's what we wanted, and I think that's what most Americans want. But that's not how these people function. And also, going back to what most Americans want, what the government is doing, what the leadership class, the donors and the various nonprofits and who all the shadowy elements, the military industrial complex and the intelligence agencies that are controlling and cajoling and fearing and cowering politicians and others into doing what they do. Those people are creating a very dangerous world, and they are carrying out um, amoral acts, and this war is one of them. Going back again, this there was no imminent threat here. Not only has Joe Kent, who just resigned, and he said this, and everyone's like, yeah, that's true. There was no imminent threat because that's not even the excuse that Marco Rubio gave until he had to take it back because his boss made him, or you know, or the Speaker of the House, or any intelligence. We've never had intelligence saying that the Iranians were about to attack or that they were on the verge of having a nuclear bomb. And I like the way that Kant explained this because we always knew that the Iranians were enriching to far higher degrees than is necessary for civilian use. That was not, there was nothing debatable about that. But at the same time, as Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, said last year, the Iranians were not planning on building a nuclear bomb. Now, Joe Kent says that, you know, they have like a fatwa against something like this because they're religiously opposed to it. Maybe, I don't know. I don't, I'm still don't understand some of the dynamics between one version of Muslims and another. Apparently, there's a much more radical sect versus the other and whatnot. But our intelligence always said that there wasn't that there was no imminent threat. We know there wasn't an imminent threat. So the reason I'm pointing that out is because a benevolent nation, a good nation, a nation of good people, a nation with leadership that is generally interested in carrying out the prescriptions of our founding generations, of our founding fathers, would not have done what just happened here. They would not have attacked this nation, and they would not make these demands and whatnot. But another thing that we have to keep in mind, and somehow we've gotten track of this, is it any coincidence that the United States has been at war over the last 30 years more often than it's not? It's it's not a coincidence if you realize that the people don't have any power over this. And this is where the uniparty, the international oligarch class, the various overlap of shadowy groups that basically control how things work, this is where they come in because no matter who is elected to office, no matter who is in the White House, you'll always see at least these three things happening: wars, you'll see wars. You'll see reckless spending. It just continues skyrocketing. We're seeing that. And you'll see the erosion of our individual liberty at the cost of growth of government. This is not a coincidence that this continues to happen. Now, we thought that maybe there was a chance that with Trump things would be different because in that first term, there was a difference. That was the first time we hadn't done what he just did now, what George Bush had done, what Barack Obama had done. You know, it's like that was the first time no one went in there and started another war. And so we thought, well, this will be it. But then things changed. Things changed dramatically. And it looks like some sort of like body snatcher took over Trump. And he's doing these things that is so uncharacteristic of him. Now, there's a few theories as to why that's happening. Some are saying he's being blackmailed. We know that, I think we know what almost without a doubt that this is being done on behalf of another country, that country being Israel. And there used to be a time, I guess, where you couldn't say this because apparently it's anti-Semitic, which is just bonkers. You could say that other countries are trying to influence us or whatever, but apparently if you say Israel, you're anti-Semitic. That's just hogwash. That's crazy talk. It's like this is what the evidence is showing. And so we know that these guys are at the center of it. We know that it benefits them. We know it doesn't benefit us. And so that's what's happened over here. Now, going back to this idea, this isn't actually the first time that that actually the idea of foreign influence is as old as this country. And George Washington, in his farewell address, which I'm always bringing up because there's so much good stuff there, he actually warned about foreign influence. And he said such attachments are particularly alarming to the truly enlightened and independent patriot. How many opportunities do they afford to tamper with domestic factions? Create the foreign influence that he's saying they can create. They sit there and they create acrimony, partisan acrimony among the host country. That would be us. So that's what's happening, obviously. He says to practice the arts of seduction. That's obviously what happened to Trump. He was bamboozled, seduced, whatever you want to call it, tricked into believing that that Iran posed this imminent threat, that they wanted to attack us, that they were making a nuclear bomb. We didn't have that intel, but the Israelis supposedly did, but they just lied. That's what happened. And he says, to mislead public opinion, to influence or all the public councils, such an attachment of a small or weak towards a great and powerful nation dooms the former to be the satellite of the latter. How prophetic is that? That is exactly what we are experiencing now. Now, the reason George Washington wrote that was because at the time, the French Satanists who were carrying out their murderous genocidal revolution there with the guillotine and everything, they were trying to get the U.S. to help them, to support that. And so Washington was not having it. Jefferson apparently was more sympathetic, which lowers my high opinion of him, because Jefferson was, I love his ideas on individual liberty or whatever, but he seems to have been fooled by what was happening in France. So anyway, George Washington warned about foreign influence. But you know what's funny? Well, it's probably not funny. George Washington also had a foreign policy. He prescribed a foreign policy that we're not carrying out now. He said, observe good faith and justice towards all nations, cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct. Now, keep that in mind, because what he's saying is it's incumbent on us as Christians, which was the dominant religion by far then. Most people were Christians there at that time. He says Christians, a country run by Christians would get along with other countries. And that's not what we're doing. I don't think you could go anywhere outside of the world, outside of Americans. And you need to realize this, people. You can't go outside of the world and no one, it's highly unlikely someone's going to tell you, or you're going to run into someone, they're going to say, you know what? America is such a good nation. They're always going around trying to dislodge these tyrants. No, what they'll say is like, man, you guys are always going around. You're always at war. You're always bombing places. You're always destabilizing. We haven't made things better in the Middle East. And we've been there for a long time, So it's like, that's really what most people say. Our currency in the U.S., in the world, has decimated greatly. Here's another one where he's saying, now at the time, Europe was the epicenter of the world, and he was saying that we shouldn't get involved in other countries' interest because they're always going to have controversy, he says, and which the causes of which are essentially foreign to our concerns. Hence, therefore, it must be unwise in us to implicate ourselves in the vicissitudes of her politics. Now, again, obviously, we were all over in Europe too. We were especially very pivotal in Ukraine. That Ukraine war would have been over a long, long time ago if we would have pulled out all support and money, and Ukraine would have been forced to strike a deal with the Russians, and less people would have died. So all this goes back to the fact that this is not a moral government. We are not acting like a moral country, and We need to realize that, because I don't think anything's going to change until we stop until we start realizing that. So with this rise in conscientious objection among the military, I think this is a good sign. I think it's a good sign that Joe Kent resigned, and now he's basically on a crusade to build opposition to it, to get the message to the White House that this is very unpopular. Polling is suggesting that this is a very unpopular war, despite the fact that Fox is saying that, I don't know, like 100, no, is it CNN? The way they had like stupid poll, 100%. It's like, that's that, like Dave Smith said, what a great line is, like, those are North Korean numbers. That's just crazy. Nothing gets 100%. For them to have the audacity to say 100% of MAGA or Republicans support it, it just, that they're not even trying anymore. I think Fox had some number or something about 90 to 95%, which is an outright lie. That is not the number either. And there's other signs that this is really, really bad. And so when the government does what it does, when it expands so many resources, billions of dollars are going there. I don't even know what the rate is anymore. I know it was like $1 billion a day, and so we're like 4 weeks in, a month in, and the government, and the Pentagon asked for like 200 billion more, and then you think about what's happening here at home, and that's another sign that these are not moral people. They're not addressing, they're not concerned. They don't look around America and say, it's like, man, our people are having a hard time affording heat. Uh, their grocery bills are skyrocketing, but the job situation and the earnings aren't improving. It's healthcare. Like, healthcare is a major issue. Healthcare just continues to get more expensive. It becomes more difficult for people to obtain healthcare. These are problems. These are problems that we're facing at home. We have cultural issues at home. We have fraud. All of that seems to have disappeared. And this is the sign that our leaders are immoral, and our leadership class doesn't give a rip about what's going on with the people. I want to go back to list one more thing. I showed you how George Washington said that this is not what we do. We don't. We should get along with everyone, and we should mind our own business. A few years later, 25 years later, John Quincy Adams, before he became president, he had a great speech, by the way, and I saved it somewhere because I really enjoyed reading it. But part of it, he goes, America doesn't go abroad in search of monsters to destroy, which is what we're doing. She is the well-wisher to the freedom and independence of all. She is the champion and vindicator only of our own. She well knows that by once enlisting under the other banners than her own, she would involve herself beyond the power of extrication. That's kind of what we're running into right now. There's a hint that Trump wants to get out of there, but he's kind of lodged in there. In all the wars of interest and intrigue, of individual avarice, envy, and ambition, which assume the colors and usurp the standard of freedom, she might become the dictatress of the world. She would be no longer the ruler of her own spirit. So by going abroad, we empty ourselves of what we should be doing here. Now, I want to finish with this, because as a Christian, one of the things that bothers me the most about this is that this is so supported by Christians. Now, I had a conversation, an online conversation with someone who I knew, an older friend back in Atlanta. I went to church with her. I'm not going to name her because I don't want to shame her or anything, but she got mad at me because, when I'm on social media, if I see something in my feed, which if it's something that I want to react to, I react to. And so I noticed that she was posting a lot of things that just weren't true, or a lot of things that were out of date, which also makes them untrue, or a lot of things that are just incomplete. So she doesn't really have a full understanding of what's going on. She's a big time Trump supporter. She thinks this is great. She's one of those that believes that we were in imminent danger. And, she said we've been in imminent danger, like a lot of people said, like for 47 years, which is crazy, because that's that defies the definition of the word. Imminent means like right now, like it's coming soon. You cannot be in imminent danger for 47 years. You cannot be in imminent danger for 10 years or even 5 years. It's crazy. But anyway, so I had this. I wouldn't call it a debate because she wasn't interested in actually debating. She just kept saying that there's no point in talking to me because I've already made my mind up. And she called me a know-it-all, which is kind of like, what are you, 5? You know, what are you, like, in high school? You're going to try and insult me for the fact that, I know I've thought about this? Like, that's not how it works. I'm not gonna feel bad because I appear to know what I'm talking about, you know? But the thing about it is, here's the crux, is she told me to stop commenting on her page because I was ruining the vibe there. She didn't make any arguments as far as why what I was saying is was not correct. The best she did, the best she tried was she sent me a video of Bibi Netanyahu talking about why they were carrying out the war, which I kind of laughed at because that's insanely hilarious. Bibi Netanyahu is a sociopathic liar. He's a sociopath, most likely. He's been saying since the 1990s that Iran was trying to do this. He's been trying to egg on a war. He's been trying to sick the United States on his enemy, on his regional enemy. This is not a good person. He is an outright liar. He's a very dishonest person, and quite frankly, I think he's a psychopath, maybe more than a sociopath, to basically do what they did in Gaza and not have any remorse to take out at least 50,000 civilians that had nothing to do with Hamas. The number I believe, even confirmed by the IDF, is like 75,000, and then supposedly IDF is saying, or whatever, that 25,000 are Hamas. So that means they killed 50,000 civilians. The way they bombed that place, especially given the precision that the IDF is capable of, tells you they didn't care. And let's just get over. Let's move past what, not just the 50,000 civilians. Again, those are assumptions. It's probably more that they killed without any mercy, which includes about 20,000 children. They carpet bombed almost the entire place. So they ended up starving many more, probably over 1 million people. They displaced almost everyone. This is amoral. This is so wrong. And she's under the spell that so many people are, that Israel is like the chosen nation or whatever. And I'm having a really hard time with this. I don't want to necessarily dive into this, but I guess I will because I'm kind of here. I'll take this rabbit trail. I've thought about this and I'm still studying about it. And I'm reading the old school prophecies and I'm reading what Paul and everyone said about it. And so far where I am, what I'm realizing is that God does have a plan of redemption at the end, and He does have a plan uh, redeem Jerusalem, and it will be. It looks like it will be in the afterlife when Jesus returns. That will be the major city. That seems to be pretty clear. But what's not clear is this idea that we're supposed to uh, protect these people and let them do anything they want while they carry on these atrocious acts. And what's also not clear is how in the world are we being blessed by blessing these guys? Because if you take into consideration, since 1948, the creation of modern day Israel, of course, we've been a major supporter since. I don't think we've been more blessed since then. All our wars since then have been undeclared by Congress. Our debt is massive. Our country, the culture of this country has eroded. And we've been there for them the whole time. We've been there for the whole time. So it looks like it's actually quite the opposite. It looks like since the creation of modern day Israel, modern American life has only gotten worse. The debt has increased. The standard of living has decreased. Our liberties have decreased, have diminished. The size of the government and its totalitarian proclivities have massively increased. So I don't think that we are being more blessed, even though we have apparently been right by Israel's side. I just want to kind of put that out there because I'm just sick of hearing that talking point. And I believe it or not, despite what I'm saying, despite my tone now, I remain open, and I am open to whichever point of view. And I haven't like concluded, absolutely what I think of that. I think the truth is more or less somewhere in between. I think God will have a remnant. He will not. He will not. He has not totally forsaken uh, Israel. But I'm not even sure I'd call them his people. There's Peter's promise there to everyone who's saved, and he says, "For you are a chosen nation, a a priesthood, a class of priests." He says all these things that he labels everyone who's a Christian. And those were all labels that, until Jesus came, belonged to the Jewish people. So I know that they call that supposedly replacement theology, but I like the other term that that Christians cite, and that is fulfillment theology. And fulfillment is in line with what Jesus came to do with everything. He fulfilled the law, and so that we wouldn't have to live under its burden. And so he brought the covenant. The covenant theology is one of grace. So anyway, all that, what I'm trying to say is that the people who should know better, Christians, they don't seem to know better, or at least a lot of them don't. I have a hard time running into Christians um, who are looking at this war and saying, "It's like, man, this is like really wrong." At least in real life, I know that if you go online, you can find kindred spirits in everywhere, and there's a lot of people online. But real life, which I still partake in, I don't hear anyone talking about, or at least having that view. I mean, I don't talk about it that much, and so maybe some of them would, but I get the feeling from the comments that I've heard in the conversations and whatever. I haven't had a lot of conversations. I've heard comments, whether it be in Bible studies, stuff like that, that doesn't seem like there's a lot of people making connections that this is wrong. We are behaving in amoral ways. And so I think that's concerning. I think that's concerning. I just don't see how this is a good thing, what's happening. And I wish that the church would wake up. I know there's elements of it waking up. I wish the evangelicals would wake up, especially because I'm in that camp and whatnot, because this is not a good thing. It is not good to waste these resources on a war that we started, on a war that was not defensive, on a war that was not necessary, on a war that's going to only give us a bunch of blowback terrorism, a bunch of blowback, 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 jihadi, rising jihadi groups. Nothing. I just don't see a whole lot of good coming out of this. Now, I'm hoping that, if any good that comes out of this, maybe it'll be that if they affect regime change, then, the Iranian people may be more free. So that would certainly be good. I'd be more than happy to get something good out of this, but it's not in America's interest. And at some point, all this do goodness that we're doing around the world, that we're expanding the resources we don't have, it's going to collapse us. And this argument that it is our responsibility to bring goodwill everywhere, which we're not even doing, but let's say whatever it is that we're doing, we're that, doesn't hold up when you consider that we're going to go bankrupt, that everything's going to collapse over here. And so when that center, that global center collapses, it's going to have reverberations around the whole world. It's going to be massive chaos. There's going to be economic collapses and all sorts of recessions at best. That would be the best thing. But we're not in a place that we should be doing this. And I just wish that more evangelicals understood what's truly happening, and that they would realize that this is not a good thing, that we are not behaving like a moral nation, because I just don't see that that's what's happening.